Hello, fellow Tolkien fans. Today we are going to talk about The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey review. I wanted to do a personal review on all these movies. They came out uh, quite a few years ago. I don't know, 5 years ago since the first one, maybe. I know it's been a while, but I feel like initially there was a lot of skepticism, and I wanted to let it sit a little bit. I rewatched them, the extended editions, all recently, and I'm going to release 3 separate reviews for each one of these movies. They're not going to be scripted like my other videos. It's going to be more of a podcast format with talking points. Um, so I hope you guys enjoy. The first thing about these movies, I have to get out of the way, is they made some major mistakes. Mostly with the effects. I feel like the art and the costume design and the makeup in Lord of the Rings was excellent. That was, I mean, probably the best makeup I've ever seen. Costumes was awesome. They won a lot of Oscars for that in The Return of the King. But in The Hobbit, I feel like Peter Jackson might have gotten lazy. Something like that. But these CGI goblins and all this business I did not appreciate. I didn't appreciate all the CGI. I mean, there's some things like Smog, obviously, you have to make CGI, but, I feel like they could have gotten a lot better response if they just did makeup again. I know that the sword choreographer from the original movies died, and he was a legend sword choreographer. I don't remember his name, but he died, so maybe that had something to do with it, that they didn't want to have to get somebody subpar to do fight scenes. But I mean, it just got a little ridiculous, especially towards the end of The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey, when they're escaping the goblin tunnels, which I will talk a little bit about later. But that was just, it's just terrible how they did that, honestly. But I'm just going to start from the beginning now that I got that out of the way, because that's the glaring flaw in all these movies. I'm going to start by saying this is actually the best Hobbit movie in my opinion. I'd actually liked it. I don't mind watching it. It doesn't bother me. It's good. They honor the book more than the other 2 movies, I feel like. They do a lot of things well. The beginning with Gandalf approaching Bilbo, I thought that was awesome. That sounded pretty much exactly out of the book. I've not read the book in a few years, but I do remember that dialogue at least being pretty similar to the one in the book. I loved how, oh, do you wish me a good morning, or whether I wish it or not, that sort of thing I appreciated. What I didn't necessarily like is how the dwarves were kind of introduced as kind of comedic relief, or comic relief rather, in some aspects, but it was limited in the first movie until about halfway through. But I loved the introduction party scene. I thought the song was epic that they sang. I thought that was awesome. I loved the, Blunt the Knives and Smash the Plates song as well. I'm glad he included that. He cut out of a lot of songs out of Lord of the Rings, so I'm glad he at least included that one in The Hobbit. The introduction, as far as them explaining the whole Erebor thing, I thought that was pretty well done. No real complaints with that. I thought it was kind of weird to just watch Thranduil walk up on his fucking giant elk. That was that was funny. It kind of made sense, I guess. I'd have to check if there's any lore to back that up. Maybe I'm incorrect in assuming that he didn't own a giant elk, but I thought that was a little ridiculous. I enjoyed the explanation. It kind of set it up well. It gave me good hopes for the movie, for sure. After they leave and they encounter the trolls, I thought this scene was pretty good. I thought it was interesting because Peter Jackson had to, go from the trolls having no dialogue in Lord of the Rings to troll dialogue in The Hobbit. I thought he did it fairly well. No complaints really with that scene. It might have been able to be executed a little better, but I liked it. When they get to Rivendell, I think that was well done as well. I mean, Rivendell looks completely different than it does in Lord of the Rings, though, which is a complaint of mine. I mean, I've done some graphic design work in creating my own Rivendell based on the Lord of the Rings, and the Hobbit one looks really different, and it was a little inconsistent. I didn't mind it, though. It had the same themes. It looked like it could be the same place. The White Council is something I really did enjoy, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people didn't like this because it wasn't in the book. It just mentions, Gandalf goes off to a White Council meeting. That's about all it mentions. But I enjoy how they specify on it, and I thought it was interesting backstory, and, I'm pretty sure it's canon, if not 100%, mostly. I really enjoyed, Gandalf going to the High Fells and, seeing the Witch King and the Nazgul breaking out of their tombs. I thought that was cool. A lot of people didn't appreciate it as much as I did. I thought the scenes with Galadriel and Gandalf were kind of odd, considering it seemed like Gandalf and Galadriel were hitting on each other, which was kind of odd. I mean, I guess they're both immortals, so I guess it's possible, but Galadriel is married. It was a little weird to see them, being flirtatious and such. I didn't think that was necessary. But then again, in The Lord of the Rings, we don't really see Galadriel and Gandalf together, because Gandalf dies in Moria, and then they go to Lothlorien right after that. So it was interesting to see that dynamic, finally. Saruman, I mean, you can clearly see Christopher Lee's aged. He is aged quite a bit for this movie. I mean, now he's unfortunately passed away. He's a legend. Very sad that he passed away. But, it wasn't as good of an acting performance by him as in Lord of the Rings, and same with Ian McKellen. But they still, they did well enough to pass. It was just odd to see a movie that was supposed to be taking, place 50, 60 years before The Lord of the Rings, and the actors looked aged. That was odd, but it was unavoidable, obviously. Next part of the movie. I also want to talk about Radagast a little bit. I again enjoyed their portrayal of Radagast. Again, he seemed kind of like comic relief. Peter Jackson likes to do that with a lot of characters when it may not be necessary, but the portrayal was decent. I liked the scenes where he's nurturing that little porcupine or whatever it was back to life and using some spells and expelling the dark magic. I thought that was fair. I mean, fair play. Again, you can kind of see in this movie, not as much as the other movies, how much Peter Jackson's trying to extend this out for the money grab for the 3 movies. But in the first one, it's not as obvious as the other 2. But, scenes like that may be unavoidable. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I disagree that he had to do that. I think 2 would have been fine. 1 probably would have been a little packed in, and we would have complained, obviously, about him cutting out too much stuff from a book. But I think 2 would have been perfect. But that's a little off topic for this movie, in particular. The Stone Giants, I heard a lot of complaints. Like, Peter Jackson was trying to sort of throw in these giant, rock'em sock'em robots, just to entertain people in the middle of the movie. I mean, those are in the book, and I enjoyed how he did that. I enjoy how he embraced the fantasy, even though we don't see something like that in Lord of the Rings, and some people may be questioning it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good enough to be put in, and I enjoyed the effects. I enjoyed that little encounter with Frodo and Thorin, and Thorin kind of shunning, or not Frodo, Bilbo. Thorin kind of shunning Bilbo, which is he's redeemed later. The Goblin Cave, where they're all trapped and fall in, that's a good scene. I enjoyed how they perceived that. Bilbo's about to leave, and then he's trapped in the Goblin tunnels. The best part about this movie is by far the Gollum Bilbo interaction. I thought that was done almost perfectly. That is like my favorite part from the books. I thought Peter Jackson executed exactly the way he should have for that part. With the riddles and all that. And gosh, what a great performance by Martin Freeman. I mean, he really knocked it out of the park. If there's one redeeming quality about these movies, is the casting for Bilbo. I thought it was spectacular. I thought all of his moments were perfect, a perfect mix of awkward and delightful, because the way he acts is just so natural and fluid, and it's how I imagine a hobbit out in the wide world would actually interact. So I really enjoyed that part. And obviously Andy Serkis, I think, is the actor for Gollum. He's obviously fantastic. I believe he also played Caesar in the Apes movies. That scene between those two actors is fantastic. I love that scene. I love how they did it. No complaints for that scene. Maybe you disagree with me. I really don't care. I love that scene. It was just, I felt, from what I remember the books, it was perfect. It was exactly how I would have wanted it to be pictured. It was amazing. And with Bilbo finding the ring and all that business, it's great. Now, what I didn't enjoy, as you can imagine, was the Goblin Tunnels and the Goblin King. That was subpar. The Goblin King, I didn't mind. I didn't mind him being CGI, really. Kind of did. I mean, it wouldn't really make sense to make him CGI and the other people not CGI, so maybe that's why they had to do it. But he was a little bit ridiculous. Again, comic relief. My phone just went off. Again, he was comic relief. So, he was a little ridiculous. And then when Gandalf breaks in with the faux hammer and basically blasts everybody down, I thought that was cool. But the escape was the worst part. I saw this analysis video on it, and it just completely made me hate that scene compared to a scene where they're escaping Moria. And something happened with Peter Jackson, similar to George Lucas in Star Wars, where he lost his mind making this movie at some parts. He still has those redeeming scenes with Bilbo, but this was unacceptable. It was basically just the most ridiculous, oh, there's a problem, let's solve it by doing this, pick up the rail and toss off a bunch of goblins at once, and all these ridiculous backflip scenes and crazy stuff. I didn't think it was necessary. It was 2 minutes of high-packed action, and it was entertaining, I guess, but it was not nearly as well filmed as the Escape from Moria or anything like that. And I just thought it was just, the dwarves made the goblins seem like inferior opponents. They just did not. Sorry about my phone, guys. I'll have that muted for next time. They were just not formidable opponents. They die so easily. The orcs die, the goblins die. They all die so easily and it's there's no realism to it. I mean, if there was in the Battle of the Five Armies, I know we're reviewing An Unexpected Journey, but there's this funny scene where Thorin and Dwalin are there's a mercenary pack of goblins, no more than 100, and Thorin's oh, that'll be easy. Come on, man, that's 100 goblins. You really think that 100 goblins, and almost no character in Lord of the Rings or in the universe besides some very high power characters would be able to just easily take on 100 goblins? I mean, come on. These are dwarves we're talking about here. They're not crazy, they're not gods. I mean, they're great warriors, and I thought they displayed that to a point, but it gets a little ridiculous after some point, and it gets even worse with the elves in the second, The Desolation of Smaug, which I'll get to in my next review. So, the escape was definitely not done well. I think they should have done it completely differently, honestly, in my opinion. And then, the last scene, out of the frying pan and into the fire. I like that little... I like all the scenes with Bilbo, I'm okay with. Almost. I feel like the scenes where Martin Freeman isn't saving the movie with his amazing acting, they kind of get out of hand. I mean, the interactions between whoever plays Thorin, Richard Armitage plays Thorin. I thought he does well, but mostly when it's with Martin Freeman. I thought their interactions were good. Martin Freeman carries it, and Ian McKellen, whatever acting skills, remains. He's aging, but, he saves it at points too. But, I thought the casting could have been better, besides, obviously those two. So in this scene, out of the frying pan into the fire, the dwarves escape the goblin tunnels after killing like 3,000 goblins and like decapitating like six. um, they go out into the woods and it's backed into a cliff. And, Bilbo comes out, he has the ring, and, Thorin and him have a little moment. And then, they go out, and I enjoyed the ending. I thought it was fine. Azog the Defiler, he wasn't mentioned in the books, to my recollection. They were being hunted by orcs the entire movie almost, but, it wasn't named Azog the Defiler. I thought it was fine to include that. I didn't, if you're gonna make 3 movies, why not? You're gonna have this big antagonist, I guess. Could they've done it without him? Probably. But it wouldn't have been as entertaining. Peter Jackson really tried to go Hollywood with these movies, so that's probably why he had to have this big villain, this huge CGI orc that makes Gothmog and Lurtz look like fucking nothing. So I understand why people would not like Azog, for sure. But, I thought, whatever, okay? I can get over that. I can forgive that. Other things I cannot forgive with this movie. The ending, I thought it was fine. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Remember, it was pretty accurate to my recollection of the books. Again, there's a little extra drama between Thorin and Azog that obviously wasn't there. But, I thought it was fine. And then they escape on the eagles. And that's it. They have a merry day at it. But, overall... Oh, I guess I should discuss the ending. I thought, Thorin forgiving Bilbo and, all that business was fine. And then seeing The Lonely Mountain, it was good. I left the theater the first time seeing this saying that was a good movie. I'm excited for these next 2. There were some factors I didn't enjoy, but overall it was good. I'd give it like an 8. But because I'm such a big fanboy, I probably rated it as like a 9.5 coming out of the theater. Watching it now, I rate it like an 8.5 maybe, just because how much I like the intro and some certain scenes with Martin Freeman. I don't know. It's such a difficult thing to think about because I know so many hardcore Tolkien fans just hate these movies. It's just, fuck you, Peter Jackson, you destroyed these. And I agree that they were definitely a disappointment, but after The Lord of the Rings, what were you guys expecting? It's a hard thing to make movies as good as Lord of the Rings. And I know there's a lot of book fans out there that don't like the Lord of the Rings movies either. My stance is that the reason I even read the books and the Silmarillion and did all this research to start this YouTube channel is because of Peter Jackson's films. They're some of the best movies of all time. If you want to dispute that, that's fine. It's just my opinion. It's why I'm a Tolkien fan. If you guys don't want Tolkien fans that, came in because they watched the movies and didn't read the books first, I mean, that's just that's idiotic in my opinion. We want to expand the franchise, and that's a great way to do it. It's one of the best things that happened. But these movies, I feel like they might have been trying to compete with Harry Potter and putting these out or something. They might have been trying to, just get a cash grab. And I think Peter Jackson, if he just took another 3 years, did all the art, did all the makeup, they would have came out a lot better. Again, this is just the first movie. I know I ranted a lot, and most of this probably wasn't even the first movie review, but that's my stance on it. I thought, again, I'd give it an 8.3 out of 10. That'd be my final review for this movie. It does certain scenes so well, and then it drops the ball in other places, and it was just the beginning of what was to come for the other 2 movies. But this movie, I might, instead of, when I watch Lord of the Rings, I binge it, and I watch all 3 extended editions in 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days. I'd probably rather watch the first movie of this one, and then stop. Maybe the first 2. But it really did not end on a strong note in this trilogy. And that's all I'll say about it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this. it was me rambling, and it's been 20 minutes. So if you guys didn't even listen to this because it wasn't interesting, I understand. But that's just my stance on these movies, and I was hoping maybe you guys would want to hear them. It's also possible this was just incoherent shit. So let me know. If you guys like it, post it in the comments, and I will be sure to do the next two. Thanks, guys.